Hey guys, this is the chapter 9 video lecture. The title of this chapter is Managing Stress. So when we think of stress, I'm sure you usually think of stress being a negative stress, and there is a definition, or at least a term related to negative stress. But I want you guys to keep in mind that whenever we talk about stress, we're talking about really all forms of stress. And so, by definition, when we look at the definition of stress, you can see here from the textbook, it's a disturbance in an individual's physical and or emotional state that affects the body's normal physiological state and to which the body must try to adapt. Okay? So again, whenever we think of stress and we think of sources of stress, and that's what the definition of a stressor is, any event or circumstance to which the body tries to adapt, may be threatening, unfamiliar, disturbing, or even exciting. Okay, so let's think about what causes us to change physiological state, and really any stressor can do that. But most of the time we associate a stressor or a source of stress as a negative situation. We call that distress. That's a negative stress. It can diminish wellness. But also, if you're in an exciting situation, your body responds the exact same way. So in this case, the stressor is actually a positive stress, and we call that eustress. Okay. So for the sake of this class, we're going to refer to stressful situations as negative stress so that we can understand, how to manage stressful situations. Okay, but just keep in mind that either way, whenever you encounter a stressful situation or a stressor, whether it's a positive event or a negative event, your body responds the exact same way. All right, so just to give you an example, let's think about if you were walking across the street and you forgot to look, and you all of a sudden looked up and you saw a bus was coming right at you, and you jumped out of the way. Imagine what you would feel like whenever you were back on the sidewalk. I mean, you would experience a racing heart, a heartbeat. You probably would be breathing very hard. You may be even sweating. Even though it's a very, very immediate event, your blood pressure probably has escalated or skyrocketed. So all of these things you would feel if you were to jump out of the way of a bus. But then also think about a positive experience. Think about, the World Series was just played this week. And think about the Boston Red Sox whenever they won the World Series, that final out, that final strike, and all the excitement and all the emotion that must have rushed through their body as they realized that they had just accomplished, for a lot of those guys, a lifelong dream. And if you think about it, think about if you were in that situation, what you would feel like. What would your body be experiencing? You probably would have an elevated heart rate, an elevated breathing rate. You may even start sweating. Your heart and your blood pressure would skyrocket. So you'd pretty much be feeling the exact same way. And that's true, because anytime you encounter a stressful situation, whether that source of stress is positive or negative, your body responds the exact same way. Just like if you were going out for a jog, and you're putting your body through a stressful situation. Exercising, we've already learned, can be very beneficial, but in all actuality, you're putting your body through a stressful experience every time you exercise. So it causes your body it causes your heart rate to escalate, causes your breathing rate to escalate, and it causes your blood pressure to skyrocket, and it causes you to sweat. You're experiencing the same thing. So again, when we talk about stress, we're talking about any disturbance to an individual's physical or emotional state that affects the body's normal physiological state. We call that normal physiological state homeostasis. You probably have heard that term in biology or even in your early high school or junior high biology days. So homeostasis is our normal physiological state. How do we define homeostasis? I mean, it's a normal heart rate, normal breathing rate, normal blood sugar, normal blood pressure, normal body temperature. So it's our normal physiological state. So anytime we encounter a stressful situation, whether that source of stress is positive or negative, our body responds, and we call that the stress response. That's the set of physiological changes that the body initiates in response to a stressor. So again, your body responds the exact same way no matter what the source of stress is. Okay? Now, the difference from individual to individual, so that's the same among individuals and really any animal on Earth that has ever lived. It's an instinctual occurrence. But what does change is what people deem as stressful situations. Like, for example, me, I am petrified of snakes. Anytime I see a snake, I mean, I jump out of the roof. I can't stand them. Some people, snakes aren't bad at all. So if they see a snake, they're, oh, look at the cute little snake. So we deem different situations as stressful. But whenever we experience a stressful situation, whether it's me with snakes or maybe you don't like dogs, and if you see a dog, your body responds the exact same way as when I do whenever I see snakes. Okay, so we deem situations differently, or stressful situations differently, but our body responds the exact same way in any case. Okay, that's the stress response. All right, so what are some of the major sources of stress in your life? And this is a list of common stressors among college students. Any change? I mean, lots of you are, college for the first year, so, living away from home or being away from family and friends, adjusting to new environments. All of this could cause this, or could be deemed as stressful. You can see here performance demands. Academically, I mean, everyone has high expectations of you. You're probably taking a lot of courses. All the courses have a lot of projects and assignments and a lot of studying required. Some of you are athletes, so you have to perform well on the field. It can be stressful. There's lots of different reasons. So you can go through the list and you can see how each of these can lead to stressful experiences. Okay, but either way, your body responds the exact same way, and that's what we have here with this slide. This is a slide from your book, or a page from your book. You can see that this is the stress response, and this is the cascade of events that happens inside your body in response to a stressful situation. So again, if you're jumping out of a way of a bus, or you're winning the World Series for the first time in your life, or you're out for a jog, your body responds the exact same way. So the first thing that happens is your nervous system, your brain, senses or perceives a stress. It sends signals to a gland in the brain known as the pituitary gland, which releases a neurotransmitter into the bloodstream. This neurotransmitter is called well, actually, that's not called acetylcholine. Let me see what that means. Okay, I made a mistake. The ACTH is not acetylcholine. It's actually called adrenocorticotropic hormone. Don't worry about it. You're not going to be expected to remember the name of that hormone. But what it does, it releases a hormone into the bloodstream. And what a hormone is a chemical messenger. Okay, so it's so this particular gland, the pituitary gland, and you can see from the picture, it's located. You can see it's just below her right eye, behind her eye. So again, I don't expect you to know the name of this gland or to be able to identify the location just yet. I mean, this is an anatomy class. Again, and also don't want you to memorize the name of the hormone. All I want you to understand is that this particular gland sends a hormone or a chemical messenger into the bloodstream that then the bloodstream transports to other locations in the body, namely the adrenal glands. And you can see from the picture, if you look just above the kidney, you can see like a yellow triangle. This is the adrenal gland. So you have two adrenal glands, one on the right, one on the left, right on top of the kidney. And these adrenal glands is where it houses cortisol, epinephrine, and norepinephrine. The epinephrine and norepinephrine together are your adrenal hormones, okay, or otherwise known as adrenaline. All right, the adrenaline sets off a cascade of events that, or a cascade of events inside your body that allows you to either fight or flee for your life. That's why we call this the fight or flight response. Okay, so let's think about what's needed to either fight or to flee for your life. Okay, so first of all, one of the hormones, cortisol, is sent throughout the body, and this allows all of the fuel storages inside the body to release energy so that we can have the energy needed to fight or flee for our life. So cortisol will tap into glycogen stores, it'll tap into fat cells, anything that will mobilize fuel sources so that our cells can produce the energy needed to continue with whatever physical function it needs. Okay, so that's the first thing it does. So it allows us to convert, to produce energy really quickly. So this is unnatural. This isn't something that just happens all the time. It only happens when we're engaged in a stressful situation. Now, you know, a lot of people will say, well, if you want to lose weight, why not just be stressed out all the time? And that's a valid statement, because if you're stressed out all the time, yeah, there's no doubt you would be tapping into your fuel stores all the time, including your fat stores. So yeah, you would lose a lot of body fat. But it's still not the most healthy way to lose weight, because there are so many other physiological events that are occurring at the same time that after a while are just not healthy. Okay, and I'll explain those in a second. Okay, so going down to number 5, the stress hormones that are released by the adrenal glands sets off the cascade of events we know as the fight or flight response. And here are the cascade of events, starting from the top on the right side of the picture. Starting with hearing ability increases. All of your senses become more acute. They become enhanced. You can hear better. You can see better. You can smell better. All of this is because there's, you know, the blood rush to those particular organs, that are responsible for those senses. More blood flows to the brain, so your senses sharpen. Pupils dilate to bring in more light, especially if you're at night. Now, I'm not saying that you can see with crystal clear vision at night, but at least your vision at night is enhanced. Perspiration increases. So the reason why this is happening is because blood is being now delivered or shunted to the muscles, which are near the skin, and your body temperature starts to elevate. All right, so if we don't perspire, then we will start to cook ourselves. So as the blood is rushed to the muscles, our body temperature elevates, and we start to perspire. We start to sweat. All right, so that sweat alone doesn't cool us down, but what it does is that whenever it's located on the skin, so now we have sweat on the skin, and then the air or the breeze flows over that moisture, that allows our body to cool down. So perspiration essentially is our natural air conditioner. Okay. Respiration rate increases. We breathe faster in order to breathe in more oxygen, or oxygen at a faster pace. In order for our muscles to work, again, we're in fight or flight mode. That means we have to keep moving, either to fight or to flee for our lives. Okay, so in order for our muscles to work, it needs an increase of oxygen. So we do that by increasing our respiration rate so that we're breathing in more air, thus more oxygen at a much more frequent rate. And then that also coupled with our heart rate increase, our heart rate starts to increase. It starts to beat faster in order to pick up the oxygen into the bloodstream, and then the blood is then delivered to the muscles so that the muscles can receive oxygen. All right, and this happens at a faster rate for two reasons. Number one, the heart rate increases, so blood is being delivered to the heart, into the muscles faster, and also blood pressure increases. The reason why blood pressure increases is because the arteries. So remember, we have the arteries, the arterial system, and you have the venous system. The arteries constrict; they become narrower. Okay, so the reason why this happens is to be able to deliver that amount of blood through the arteries much more quickly. So if you imagine, like, let's say you're outside, water, you turn on your water hose and you're letting water just flow out of the hose naturally. Okay, so there's some amount of volume coming out of the some amount of volume of water coming out of the hose, every second or every minute, whatever. But if you put your finger on the top part of the hose to where it starts coming out a lot faster, it's the same amount of volume that's coming out of the hose. It's just coming out much more faster. Okay, so that's what's happening with your blood vessels. Whenever the arteries constrict, it's the same amount of blood, but it goes through faster and it gets delivered to the muscles much faster. So there's two reasons why the muscles receive blood much faster. It's the heart rate, increase in heart rate, and increase in blood pressure. Okay. So as a result of the cortisol being released into the bloodstream, it's delivered to the liver and fat tissues to release energy-producing substances into the bloodstream that are delivered to all the cells in the body, so that whenever the glucose or the organic molecules reach the mitochondria, it produces energy. We've already talked about that. The digestive system slows as blood supply is diverted to more critical areas, namely the muscles. So if we're at rest or if we're not engaged in a stressful situation, most of our blood stays in our core, mostly to help with digestion. All right, so the blood can be used to either to deliver the oxygen needed for the digestive system to work, or to pick up all the nutrients that are passing through the intestines, so that from the food that we've just eaten. Okay. It says here that urine production decreases. This is in an effort to stay hydrated, so we don't want to urinate or lose water whenever we're in a stressful situation. We want to stay hydrated. More blood flows to the muscles. Muscles become tense. I've already talked about that. When we're engaged in a stressful situation, our immune system activity decreases. So this is when we're more susceptible to contracting illnesses or diseases or germs or whatever. Our body's natural defense system isn't working at full capacity at this point. So this is why if you've gone through a stressful week during finals week where you're up all night, you're getting very sleep, you're constantly stressed, constantly studying, constantly pushing yourself, and then you get through finals, and then the next week you're trying to rest, and then all of a sudden you get sick. It's because during that week, whenever you're stressed out, your body was more susceptible for contracting an illness. Okay, that happens a lot. The final thing on the list, it says that here that blood clotting ability increases. So that means if you get wounded, if you're in a fight or if you're fleeing for your life in your fight or flight situation, if you get wounded, your body clots much more quickly. Okay, so that's an effort to decrease blood loss. Okay, so this is what happens when you're engaged in a stressful situation. So if you think about it, I mean, it's not healthy for all of this to be happening whenever, all the time. Now, if it needs to, as a result of a stressful situation, yeah, this is the body's natural defense system. I mean, this is instinct. Again, every animal on Earth experiences this. But if there's a way to manage this and to only allow this response to occur when it's most needed, then that becomes more effective and actually enhances your level of wellness. Okay. So why does stress cause harm? Okay, well, there's a couple of reasons. So I'm going to start off with one of the concepts that the book mentions. This is called the general adaptation syndrome. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, your body has a natural, a normal physiological state. We call that homeostasis. Okay. So again, normal body temperature, normal heart rate, normal breathing rate, normal blood sugar, everything's normal. Okay. So whenever you encounter a stress or a stressful situation, your body does go into immediate alarm situation where we set off this cascade of events that we know as the fight or flight syndrome. From going from to the previous slide. Okay. And then, your body wants to return back to normalcy. It wants to return back to its normal homeostasis. Okay. But too often do we encounter a stress, or we're constantly or chronically stressed out. Okay. So what happens is that the body actually kind of produces a new state of homeostasis. So let's say your normal heart rate without any stressful situations is about 60 beats per minute. But then, you're encountering a stressful situation, or at least you engage in chronic stress where you're constantly stressed out for whatever reason. Let's say you go days or even weeks being stressed out constantly. Your body starts to sense that, maybe that 60 beats per minute is not so normal anymore. Maybe our new heart rate should be at 112, 115 beats per minute. And it just causes your heart to work harder. Okay. Now, at the same time, whenever you disengage from that stressful situation, like I said, let's say you go through finals week and finally you get done with the stress, and then your body's trying to return back to homeostasis, or to its original homeostasis, it actually dips down lower, and it causes your body to be exhausted. Okay, so that's what's happening with the general adaptation syndrome. So that's a general description of what happens whenever you encounter a stressful situation. But let's look more closely at specific harm that can occur if you're chronically stressed. If you remember, I discussed this concept of vasoconstriction, meaning whenever you're in a stressful situation, your blood vessels constrict, or at least your arteries constrict, and that's in an effort to deliver blood to the muscles much more quickly than normal. Okay, and you can see from these two pictures, you can see normal blood flow, and you can see the opening of the lumen, or the interior portion of the artery where the blood actually flows. And then you can see a constricted artery, you can see here, with restricted blood flow. So you can see that blood flow is still passing, but in a very restricted space. Okay? Now, that isn't harmful. I mean, that's natural. That's actually beneficial for us, so that we can deliver oxygen to the muscles much more quickly whenever we need to. But what happens whenever in individuals who have the inability to manage stress, or who have failed to develop stress management techniques, the constant engagement in stress, or being stressed out, the people who are constantly stressed out, they're constantly constricting their blood flow, their blood vessels, and then their blood vessels are dilated or relaxed, and then they're constricted again, and then relaxed, and then constricted again, and then relaxed. Well, this constant, or this frequent constriction, relaxation could actually lead to damage to the internal lining of the artery. And you can see here from this picture, so if you look at this picture here, you can see that there's, there's three layers. You have the outer layer, then you have a middle layer, and then you have an internal layer. Okay, the middle layer is that's the tunica media. That's where the muscle, the smooth muscle in the artery is. This is the muscle that contracts and causes the lumen, or the opening of the artery, to constrict. The outer layer is called the tunica externa, and then the inner layer is called the tunica interna. Okay. Now, here is a magnified version of the picture that I just showed you. So you have the outer layer is the tunica externa. You have the middle layer, which is the muscle. This is the tunica media. And then you have the internal layer, or I'm sorry, this is the tunica externa, all this red, all this part right here. And then the cells that you see here, this is the tunica media, this is the muscle layer. And then you have this very delicate, thin layer in the middle. This is the tunica interna. Okay. All right. Now, again, I don't expect you to know the names of all three layers. That's not the point of this. It's just I want you to understand there's three layers, but the internal layer is extremely delicate. In many cases, or in most cases, this layer is only one cell thick. And the reason why is because this is the layer that eventually converts into the capillaries, which is where gas exchange occurs either in the lungs or in tissues throughout the body. Okay, so going back to that constant restriction or constriction, relaxation, constriction, relaxation, constriction, relaxation, eventually that constant movement of the arteries will actually lead to damage to the internal lining of the artery. So you can see here there's a tear in the arterial wall. Okay? Now, this tear is not heart disease, or it's not cardiovascular disease. Okay? But what it is, it's an opportunity for clogging to begin. So we can have clogged arteries. Okay? So, you know, you can see here, this is a microphage, this is a white blood cell, and then you can see here, these are red blood cells. Okay? So this is normal blood flow. You know, right now it's a relatively healthy artery, except for now that we have a damaged wall. Well, also in the blood are all the foodstuffs that we eat. Okay, and some of the food that we eat are the fats or the lipids. I mean, we know that we need fats and lipids in our diet, so we consume them. But you know, there's also particular types of fat that are considered unhealthy, the saturated fats or the trans fats. And then also, you know, people who have a diet high in fat have more fat in the blood. And you can see here, this is a picture of cholesterol, but you can see from the picture there's several different, several fat droplets. I'm just going to say that for this class. But essentially, these are the fats that can lead to damaging events inside the cardiovascular system. And you can see from this picture here, you can already see a plaque accumulation inside the lumen of the artery. Okay? So what's happening is that initial lesion or that initial damage to the arterial wall occurs, and as blood passes, some of those fat droplets, you know, the LDL, the triglycerides, the total cholesterol, all of that attaches to that area of that injured area, and then, you know, more fat cells start to accumulate to that, to where eventually you start to develop a plaque inside the artery. And you can see here at this point, complicated lesion, you can see that the fat buildup has almost constricted, I mean completely constricted blood flow. You can see from this picture here, it's the same situation. You have this plaque buildup, and instead of having a normal space or area to flow, blood then has to go through that restricted area, and it increases the likelihood for these blood cells to start to clot inside the artery. And that's what you see from these pictures. So from this picture, you have a normal artery, you have that initial tear where fat starts to accumulate. It starts to accumulate to the point where you have a very, very restricted lumen for blood to flow. And now that you have that, all the blood flow becomes closer in contact, it could actually clot and completely block blood flow. Okay. Now, why is this? Why is this damaging? Or alarming? Now, this can happen throughout the entire body. This plaque buildup inside the arteries is known as atherosclerosis. It's a form of CVD. If it happens in the arms or legs, it's called peripheral vascular disease. But if it happens in the heart, it could lead to a heart attack. Or if it happens in the arteries that lead to the brain, it could lead to a stroke. Okay? So this situation occurs in everyone. But the more unhealthy you are, so let's think about what unhealthy means. The more you're stressed out, the inability to manage stress, the less activity you're engaged in, so you're physically active. The more fat you eat in your diet, the more sugar you eat in your diet. I mean, all of these, the more you smoke, the more you drink alcohol, the more that you do things that aren't considered healthy, then you're increasing the likelihood that you've developed atherosclerosis even throughout your body in multiple locations. And over time, eventually your body's going to start to suffer. You're going to start to experience pain frequently in different locations of the body. You're going to have to start going to the doctor more. You're going to have to start, taking medications, prescribed medications to lower blood pressure, to help alleviate plaque buildup. You may even have to have open heart surgery. I mean, there's just so many things. You could lose a leg. I mean, there's so many debilitating things that can happen if you just don't engage in healthy behaviors throughout a lifetime. So, it's important to exercise. It's important to eat well, but it's also very important to manage your stress, to learn how to manage your stress. This is another disease that, I don't know that I want to talk about diabetes at this point. Because eventually diabetes leads to plaque buildup that constricts the arteries. All right, so here's a list of health conditions that can develop from chronic or unmanaged stress. Could lead to several or a variety of physical health conditions, including cardiovascular disease. Hypertension develops because, if you think about it, if you have blockages in the arteries throughout your body, it's going to be very difficult or very challenging for the blood to flow throughout your body. I mean, if it's constantly engaging or encountering areas with restricted area or restricted space, then your blood is going to be backed up chronically, constantly. There's nothing you can do about that. That's the definition of that's the characteristic of hypertension. Hypertension is not just high blood pressure. Hypertension is high blood pressure even in your most relaxed state. I mean, you have the inability to decrease blood pressure. We experience high blood pressure whenever we encounter a stressful situation. Yes, we encounter high blood pressure whenever we engage in exercise. That's true also. But whenever the stress is alleviated, or when we complete our exercise session, our blood pressure decreases back to normal. But in people who have developed hypertension, they have the inability to decrease their blood pressure. Their blood pressure remains high, about 140 milligrams, at least 100 milligrams, millimeters of mercury for systolic blood pressure all the time. And again, there's no way to decrease it, and it's a product of the backed up blood flow through the cardiovascular system. Okay. Ulcers, irritable bowel syndrome, migraine headaches, insomnia, the inability to sleep, all of these can be developed through chronic or unmanaged stress. And another important factor, another important condition that can be caused from chronic or unmanaged stress is mental health disorders. In fact, half of Americans suffer from some sort of mental health disorder at some point in their lives. These can be simple phobias, as I mentioned. I'm afraid of snakes. Or it can be more complex disorders like anxiety disorders, mood disorders, or even, eating disorders, depending on what the source of stress is. So the inability to manage stress can put us into increase the likelihood of developing several adverse health conditions. These are several videos. I used to be able just to click on the play video button, but it typically doesn't work anymore. So what I've started to do, I just kind of copy and paste the title of the slide. So stress can damage a woman's health, and Google it, and I would type in ABC News, and it usually leads straight to the video that was supposed to be seen. So if you want to see this video, you can look at that. Okay, so So it's obviously important to manage, develop stress management techniques. Um, from this slide, you can see that there's three terms associated with stress management: self-esteem, self-efficacy, and hardiness. Self-esteem is just um, it's a description of how you appraise or assess your life. If you feel like you're able to, or at least identify negative sources of stress, and you're able to prevent or to avoid or to manage those situations. Efficacy, it's the same. It's almost the same as self-esteem, but it's more about establishing confidence in your performance abilities. But really, the term hardiness is what we would be trying to achieve when it comes to stress management. Hardiness is a psychological hardiness that includes the characteristics of control, commitment, and willingness to embrace challenge. Many researchers believe it's the foundation of remaining healthy through coping with stress. So with hardiness, you have developed a strategy, a commitment to maintaining or to managing stress levels. That you're able to not only recognize what sources of stress are, but you've also developed techniques to help you manage your stress whenever you encounter those stressful situations. And your willingness, or at least your commitment, to recognize and to embrace, to cope with the stressful situation. All right, so whenever we think about managing stress, we're trying to get you guys to think of not just looking, okay, well, I'm going to study harder. No, it's about staying committed to remaining stress free in all that you do all the time. And here's a list of techniques that you can engage in, from developing an internal strategy whenever you recognize sources of stress, or whenever you encounter stress, whenever you have to deal with stress. Understanding what your role is in controlling the situation rather than letting the situation control you. Adopting good wellness habits, including regular activity and exercise. So again, this isn't we do this only when we encounter a stressful situation. We actually develop an active approach to preparing our body to deal with stressful situations. Improving your coping strategies, changing behavioral responses. Now, the next couple slides will give you more details on how you can embrace on each of these ideas. Managing time and finances, controlling thoughts and emotions, seeking social support, whether it's with friends or family, learning relaxation techniques. I'll talk about some of those in a second. And then cultivating spirituality. So, developing your own spiritual, culture, if you will, whether it's through religion or through the spirit at your university, or camaraderie among your friends. whatever. So that's up to you to decide. But the idea is to develop a stress management approach. This isn't, the goal is not to develop a strategy for when you encounter a stressful situation. It's to develop a strategy to prepare yourself and prepare your body to deal with any stressful situations as you go through life. So this is a commitment to managing stress, not just so when this happens, I'm going to do this. No, it's about, this has happened, but since I have been doing all of these things, it doesn't affect me, because I'm so committed to a life of wellness that I'm capable, regardless of what the source of stress is, of dealing with it. And it's almost like you don't think about it. That's where the efficacy comes into play. You have this confidence about yourself that it's effortless, even though it's challenging to most people. Whenever finals come around and a lot of people start worrying about their grades and studying for exams, You, on the other hand, are realizing, you know what? I've prepared myself my entire semester, or this entire semester, to end this semester well. So it's a difference. It's a difference in strategy. It's a different in mindset. Okay. So here are some ideas on how you can enhance each of the techniques that are listed. You can go through on your own and think about how how they apply to you. Some of these don't necessarily apply to you. This isn't saying that you have to embrace on all of the ideas, but at least they're ideas of how you can enhance this particular focus. Like, for example, managing your finances, manage your thinking, relaxation techniques. This is what I like to do with relaxation techniques. I usually have a relaxation breathing session, progressive muscle relaxation, meditation. I usually do that in class, but unfortunately this is an online class, so I don't get to do that with you guys. Everyone is going to engage in yoga. At least that's one of the activity sessions. So you'll have to record yourself engaged in yoga, which I'm looking forward to. Hypnosis, spiritual development, all of these are part of stress management. Here's another video. Again, if you copied the title of the slide, Meditating to Happiness, and Googled it along with ABC News, it'll take you straight to the video. Likewise with this, Beginner's Guide to Yoga. Okay, so all of the ideas that you saw in the last couple of slides, again, the concepts are big. I mean, like time management. Okay, so time management is essential, and in the slide provided you with ideas of how to enhance your time management techniques. Same thing with relaxation techniques. So look at all that information and really start to develop a stress management plan for yourself. You can use lab point 9.1 from your book. I forget what page number it is, but you just look for in the back of chapter 9. The final pages of chapter 9, you'll find lab 9.1, and that'll help you assess yourself in terms of what are common sources of stress and what are some of your strengths, what are some of your weaknesses, and it'll allow you to develop a plan according to your assessment. Okay. And then to develop a plan for managing stress, almost just like what you're doing with your behavior change project. But this would be for a stress management plan. So you can go through these steps. I'm not trying to downplay these, but there's obviously a lot of individual engagement that's needed in order for you to develop a plan that works specifically for you. But again, you can go through the ideas to help enhance each of these crucial points. So again, you can look at this slide and see, okay, so I need to develop internal resources. These are some ideas. This is how I'm going to do it. And again, adapting good wellness habits. I mean, we encourage exercise or regular physical activity, but the way that you do that is very individualistic. Some people like jogging every day for 40 minutes. Others, like to go hiking or go fishing or go to the weight room. I mean, everybody does things differently. So again, I can't go through all of these points and pinpoint or dictate what you should or should not do. This is an individualistic concept. This is an opportunity for you to assess the information in the slides and to develop a technique for yourself, and just to continue on with that from here on out. Even through the remainder of this semester and on to the future of your life. So take a look. I encourage you to, but just remember that it's important to manage stress, because if you don't, it can lead to an array of physical and mental health conditions that could have an impact as soon as 2 to 5 years from now. Just, you never know. Okay. So I encourage you to look at this. If you have any questions regarding stress management, please let me know. All right. Well, you guys have a great night. I will talk to you guys soon. Now I don't know how to stop it. Oh, there it is. All right.